So, what if I told you that the best toolkit for dealing with all the stress and anxiety of modern life wasn't some new app, but the private journal of a Roman emperor from nearly 2,000 years ago? Today, we're diving into the incredibly timeless and practical wisdom of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. This, right here, is the absolute foundation for everything we're going to talk about. It is a radical shift. Think about it. Traffic jams, annoying coworkers, stuff you see on the news, all of it is completely outside of your control. But how you respond to those things, that, Aurelius says, is where all your power is. It's where you find your strength. Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice? Well, here's our roadmap. First, we need to get to know the incredible person who came up with these ideas. Then, we're going to break down 4 powerful Stoic tools that are just as useful for getting through your week as they were for running the Roman Empire.
All right, first step. To really appreciate the advice, you've got to understand the man and the absolutely insane circumstances he was writing in.
I mean, really try to picture this. This wasn't some philosopher sitting in a comfy chair. Marcus Aurelius was, quite literally, the most powerful man on earth. He was leading the empire through nonstop war, a horrible plague, and he even suffered the unimaginable pain of losing several of his own children. And these notes, they weren't for an audience. They were his personal survival guide, jotted down in military tents on the battlefield. And that's the real key, you know? He never ever meant for us to read this. Meditations is basically his private journal, a bunch of reminders and pep talks he wrote to himself to practice being a Stoic. It's a practical handbook for living, not some stuffy academic text. Okay, so let's get into the first and most fundamental tool in his kit. Think of this as the operating system for everything else in Stoicism. This lays it out perfectly. The Stoics split the world into 2 simple buckets: things you can control and things you can't. And guess what? Most of life, what other people think, your reputation, even your health to some extent, falls into that second bucket. So all the time we spend worrying about it is just wasted energy. The only things in your control are your own judgments, your responses, and your will. That is where 100% of your effort should go. And this is the big takeaway from that. It's not the bad events that make us unhappy, it's our judgment about them. It's the story we tell ourselves. So by focusing on the quality of our thoughts, we can take back the steering wheel of our own happiness, no matter what's happening around us. So, we focused our minds. Great. But how does that actually help us act in the world? When things get complicated, what do? Well, for that, the Stoics gave us a kind of moral compass. For the Stoics, a good life was all about virtue, and they boiled it down to these 4 core ideas. Wisdom is just seeing the world clearly. Justice is about treating people fairly. Courage is facing down challenges, and temperance is about self-control, moderation. For instance, say a coworker takes credit for your idea. Your gut reaction is probably rage, right? But with this compass, wisdom helps you see it objectively, not just as a personal attack. Justice reminds you to be fair in your response. Courage gives you the strength to actually address it, and temperance keeps you from screaming and making things worse. It's basically a filter for every decision you have to make. But what about those really big things? The stuff that is absolutely 100% out of our control. A flight gets canceled, you get a bad diagnosis, a global crisis hits. How do you find any kind of peace then? This is a pretty wild question, isn't it? I mean, not just tolerate it, not just accept it, but to actually love whatever life throws at you. It sounds kind of impossible, but the Stoics had a specific practice for this. They called it amor fati, a love of fate. The whole idea is to just stop fighting reality. Instead of wishing things were different, you embrace them as if you would have chosen them yourself. And that simple shift takes you from a place of resistance and frustration to one of acceptance, and maybe even gratitude. And a great way to practice this is with an exercise they called the view from above. Just imagine you're zooming out from wherever you are. You see your house, then your city, then your country, then the whole planet as a tiny blue dot in space. Now, from that perspective, how big is your problem, really? This quote just nails that feeling, doesn't it? Our whole lives are just this tiny little blip in the grand scheme of things, and realizing that doesn't make our lives smaller. It frees us from the crushing weight of our temporary problems. And that leads us to the final tool in the Stoic toolkit. It might be the most motivating one of all. Now, it's going to sound a little dark at first, but trust me, it's actually the complete opposite. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. The Stoics didn't dwell on this to be depressed. They used it to create absolute clarity. It's the ultimate filter for your life. When you remember your time is finite, you're forced to ask, is this argument really important? Is this grudge worth my precious time? Is this really how I want to spend my day?
At the end of the day, knowing there's a deadline is what gives life meaning. It's what stops us from putting things off forever. It cuts through all the noise and helps separate what's essential from what's trivial, forcing us to live with a real sense of purpose, right here, right now. So I'll leave you with that. A toolkit, almost 2,000 years old, from a Roman emperor who had the weight of the world on his shoulders. And it all comes down to asking ourselves this one simple but incredibly powerful question. Knowing your time is limited, what truly matters today?